Hi guys, welcome to Music BB. I'm 315, and today I'm joined by Matthew Bruce. Hello. I've actually listened to your music before, haven't I? Because you submitted a song called Paradise before. It had quite sort of 80s vibes to it. And I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. It felt like almost like I got my brand new six string kind of song, but with more of the synth sort of elements to it. So I was just listening to that before I started this interview again, just to remind myself of the song, what it was like. So can you give everyone listening, however many that'll be, a bit of a background about yourself as an artist?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in a very musical home. Dad played guitar, taught me and my older sisters. Once we got old enough, we started playing. I've been playing since I was about 10 years old. So quite a few years on that. But I grew up with this love of not just like one era or decade of music. I mean, Dad made sure that we were just like listening to everything. So I mean, every day was something different. I was going from like John Cougar Mellencamp, Sam Cooke, Bruce Springsteen, the Eagles, and then the next week it would be like the best of Motown. My dad was from Motown originally, like he was from the Detroit Dearborn area, so that was a big influence of music growing up. So, but then my sisters got older and they were listening to more stuff, so that's kind of where a lot of my musical stuff. So, like as I said, I was grew up listening to a bunch of music. So I grew up playing. I picked up a couple other instruments: drums, bass, a little bit of piano, guitar. I'm the most average bass player you've ever met in your life. Um, but so I just played and played and played, and I never really wrote anything until, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a pandemic. Not a lot of people remember about this, but
No, some small thing. I don't.
it's weird. I bring it up and people just stare at me. But
Yeah, what you want about?
yeah, but I found myself kind of having this time, and I knew too I wanted to start. I had friends and family who they played like bars on weekends and breweries and pubs and stuff, and it just seemed like fun. I was like, I think I could do that. Like I've been playing and singing for years. I'm like, I no reason why I don't think so. But to do that, I kind of thought like, okay, well, I have to ask these places. And I'm like, and I can't be like, hey, can I play at this place? And they're like, what do you sound like? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, do you send them a video? So part of me was just like, well, what if I write some music and then I can, just do my own stuff, and then that'll be like, hey, this is what I sound like, and that's kind of where it started. And I wrote like that EP album, not sweet, Change of Pace. I wrote the whole thing in about 2 weeks. And except for one song came 2 years prior. Actually, that was its own little thing. But I did it. I found this little recording studio, and somebody had recommended to me, and me and one other guy, just between the two of us, we played everything, which was just awesome. And he was one of the most talented guys I know. So much fun in the studio, just playing around, and to watch a song come to life. I mean, for the first time, like I just remember I was over the moon after the very first night. We just had this little like fleshed out, like, okay, here's just the basics of this song, and just like I just remember smiling and listening into it. It was like an hour ride home, the whole ride home. I was just like, this is awesome. I mean, it's a whole different feeling.
Yeah, I love that when you've made a piece of music, you just listen to it on repeat, don't you, for so
Oh yeah.
long, don't you? You just get so involved in it. And that's lovely. Myself, I started putting my music out there when it was the pandemic. I think it just seemed like the thing to do. Like, let's get our music out there. So you spoke about your family really inspired you to get into music, and there was a lot of influence there, especially from your father.
Yeah.
What were your main influences? Like, what did you cling to?
Like musical influences, or just in general?
Yeah, musical artists, bands, anything like that in
Yeah.
general.
So with the album, I it was really difficult because I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to be, all pretentious, like, to say, oh my, this is going to be unlike anything you've ever seen. I'm like, hey, you're probably going to hear something like this. But I, I had a couple influence. It was just I was trying to get my style as much as possible, but I on every song I actually had like what I call a reference song, and it was I would send it to my producer and I would say, this is the vibe I want this song to have.
Yeah.
And some of those came from like like an Ed Sheeran, or even something popular like that. And then some of them was like some obscure stuff. Anthony Ramos, who if you don't know, is a Broadway guy who did
Right.
Hamilton. I mean, like
Oh.
yeah, like But he had a rap album that was fantastic, and I was like, I just really like the vibe of this song. I kind of want to match that. And but my single Paradise, that came from my absolute love and adoration of the musician Ben Rector. Not sure if you're familiar with him, but his music was like very impactful, especially in my writing now as I'm working on some new stuff. Like uh, that song came from I listened to his stuff, and he's like writing so many songs about this awesome childhood he had. Like, and I just started thinking, I was like, I had a decent childhood. Like, I think I could give that a shot. And but like you said too, the '80s really gave me a push with that one. You know, I loved the Eagles and Journey and Styx. I had the best of like Foreigner and Styx and Bob Seger like on a cassette in my very first car. So like that kind of pushed me in that direction as well.
Yeah. I'm loving hearing all this sort of American influence. It really interests me, like what Americans have as influences to get into. Very different to when I was growing up in England, and the influences you definitely get some of the American traveling over, but very different kind of vibes you get. So if you could, well, you can't really describe the music that you typically create then, I guess. I guess it's more of what you're feeling at the time, the like you said, the vibe you're trying to match.
Yeah, which I hate sometimes because people ask me, what genre would you call it? And you just sound so pretentious when you go, well, I can't, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be like, well, I can't. Well, like some of them sound, a little bit like country. One is like almost like folk, and one is like like an R&B, like light vibe. Like it's not like I was trying to do that. It's just what I was doing. It's what I thought fit it.
I think I'd prefer that. I think it doesn't really sound pretentious to me. It sounds like someone finding their own voice, or at least playing around with it. And you think of some of the biggest influences that we have in pop culture, they were pushing the boat out and doing something different. You think the Beatles and the amount of different songs they had, it was mad. So
for sure. So I do not play music full time. I actually teach little kids. And every day I play.
Same.
Oh yeah, nice, yeah.
Primary school, so elementary, is it?
yeah, elementary, second grade. I think year 2 for you guys then. Yeah, I think it matches up. But I play them a different song every day, and every like 9 weeks I go through a different decade. So we start with the 60s and 70s. We're in the 80s right now. But what I do is every Friday though I play Beatles music because they fit every era, and it just changes slightly as they go, and the kids love it because they're just like, I'm like, this is still the Beatles, guys. Like, I know we were listening to we were listening to I Want to Hold Your Hand, but now it's Eleanor Rigby. Okay, we're changing things completely.
I know they were like so ahead of their time. I was listening to Sgt. Pepper's the other day, not the Sgt. Pepper's song, but the one that's towards the end of their album, like Sgt. Pepper's When They Repeat Again, and the beats on it sounds like a sort of 90s kind of groove beat, and it's just so like ahead of their time. No, they're really good. So I think it works as artists. It works in your favor to be different and unique. Sometimes it can be a bit detrimental, and it takes people a while to go, this is what you're like. But they appreciate you for it, because there's so many artists that you listen to, and they sound like other artists, and you go, well, if I've got that artist, why would I listen to this artist at home? Like when mom says, oh, we've got the Beatles at home, so so what's your creative process like? You said that you kind of came up with songs, but then you spent 2 weeks coming up with songs other than one in there. So how does it work generally for you?
So with that album especially, I mean, it was the one I'm doing. I'm working on something right now, and it's way different than what I was doing before. Because with that one, it was I just had these little bursts of creativity where somebody said something. So the first song on the whole album is called Lonely With You. And that was like the first one I written for this album specifically. And a friend of mine just said it, like just had the phrase. And I was like, oh, that would be like a good song. And I just took it and I, hit a chord, just started like fiddling around with the music a little bit. The words kind of came a little bit slower than the actual music did. But I had that done in about a day. And I was like, oh, that was really cool. And then the next day I'm just kind of working on some other stuff. And it was one of those I think I got really lucky with the place I was in, because I could just write and I could just go, okay, what if I did this? What if I did this? The one thing I say that really annoys people who I know are really like big songwriters, I didn't write from any personal experience. I didn't write from any like life moments or things like that. I just wrote I like storytelling, and I like Billy Joel, fantastic storyteller in his writing. And I'm not at all comparing myself to Billy Joel there. Just want to point that out. But I said, okay, what if I wrote, a sad, slower song? And so that's where it was Don't Let Me Go. That's okay, what's the story? Okay, like she wants to leave, he doesn't. They're fighting, that's it. So it was just, okay, now I have to write around that story. And it made it easier for me, honestly, when I put a narrative to it, because then I could go, okay, what happens next?
Yeah. Sometimes that can help you easily create a melody and fit the lyrics to it as well.
Yeah.
But I do love those spur of the moments when you're in that right place, the right time, and you're just like, let's do this. And it just seems to work and click. And, those moments can be few and far between for some people. And then for other people, that can be like every day living like that, which is,
I was on lockdown in my basement for 10 days. And I have my guitar and a piano, and I was just like, all right, let's see what happens. Like, that's just kind of how it works.
That's great. Yeah. That kind of attitude, it reminds me a lot of, I don't know if you heard of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, but they just go, basically. Whatever comes to mind, they just go with it. Australian band, really weird name, but they've released.
That's an awesome name.
Yeah, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, but they released like 5 albums in a year. It's just, they're that quick. Like, they just do. And sometimes I'm in awe of that, because I have times when I'm like that and times when I'm definitely not like that as well. So I've had like a sort of half a year to 3/4 of a year of not being able to songwrite. And that's difficult too. Yeah. So this new thing you're working on, so it's not Change of Pace, it's not Paradise, it's a completely new thing, different from everything else. What's the creative process going? How's that going?
Frustratingly. Because I said I wanted to do something new this summer. I said I was going to do a new album, 6-7 song EP type thing. And it's frustrating, especially when I had that whole moment of creativity and I'd had like, 2 weeks, knocked out a bunch of songs. And now I'm just like, it's been a week and I've got a chorus, so it's frustrating, but I enjoy it. And I've got my own little home, like, music room that I can just kind of play and sit around in. And it's really, it's a fun, frustrating experience, if that makes sense, where you're just like, you want to get it done, but you want to do it justice. You don't want to just put words on a page. You don't want to just, toss out something where you're like, because I have like 1 or 2 that I'm like, I wrote the whole song and I finished and I'm just like, yeah, I don't like this. Like, I just, I was like, I think I just wrote it to write it. And so it's really a matter of, do I care enough about it to record it? And do I think that I can do something with it?
That can be an issue, can't it? When you've recorded something, you feel like everything you create in your mind goes to, can I record it? Can I record it? And then you kind of put that pressure on yourself, like, is this good enough to be recorded? Is it not? When actually, if you'd never recorded before that, you wouldn't have even thought about that. That would have just been a song, and that would have been it. So you create this kind of false pressure for yourself sometimes when you do that. And this project you're making, you never know how long it could take. It could take a year longer. It could not. But that's the way it is. And sometimes you have to say to yourself, actually, no, blank slate, and whatever my new idea is, I'll do that. That can be a challenge. I feel for you. I do.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no, you carry on. I was gonna.
Well, and I was saying, and in the writing process too, I am my own biggest self-critic. So even with the stuff I've recorded where I'm like, oh, this was, what I thought was good to record, I'm like, why did I think that? I second guess even the stuff that I've already finished where I'm like, well, this isn't better than this. And I didn't even like this,
Yeah.
So
you can get to a point where you listen to the stuff you loved making and actually then going, I'm not sure about it. And you second guess yourself all the time.
I listen, I don't listen to my, but like somebody will be like, oh, I was listening to this song the other day, it's yours. And I just go, why? I was like, I can hear all the mistakes. I know you can't. I said, I can hear it all. I'm like, oh, see right there. No, I missed that. And you can't hear it, but I heard it. Like,
yeah, you do. You hear all the small mistakes, all the things in your voice, the cracks, the slightly out of tune that nobody else will hear. But to you, it's like that grating, annoying feeling, isn't it? And nobody cares really other than us, but hey ho. So Change of Pace. Who would be interested in this album? Who is it for? If you had to give it to some audience, what would that be?
I was about to say that's me on the self-deprecation there. It's going, no one, not a single person.
Just myself.
Just me. Not even me. I don't even like. No.
When you look at your Spotify Wrapped and you see you're your own favorite fan, and that's it. You're like, yeah.
Oh, I'm my number one fan. All right, let's
Yeah.
go. But I don't know. I get people who I have like friends and people who come up to me and say they like it and say, and it's like I said, it's a different style, it's a different thing. I know it's not for everyone. I never say like, oh, everyone. Whenever people ask me about it, they're like, oh, you have music, and they say, yeah. They said, oh, can I listen to it? I always ask them like, what kind of music do you like? Because based on what you like, I will tell you which song to listen to. Because okay, they're like, oh, I'm a big country fan. I said, listen to Sweet Sounds. I said that's the most country song on there. Time We Share is the other one. Like those two, like kind of lean heavier into the country side. They're like, well, I like a little bit more like rap and R&B. I said, change pace. It's like, because that one kind of hits some beats and it hits some different stuff. Like that one was a little bit different, which is funny that one was rap. I wrote that one on ukulele, and then it turned into like an R&B, like a synth drum like type thing. But yeah, with each song, I kind of say, I'm like, there's a different style, different thing, so depending on what people like, I tell them that. But honestly, I feel like, it's one of those two where if you don't like one of the songs, maybe you like another one. I think if you give it a chance, you can just kind of go through and go, okay, maybe not that one, maybe that. Okay, this one's a little bit better. And I think that's the nice thing about making stuff like this, where it's like, it doesn't have to be, it's all one style. So it's either you hate this or you love it. It can be a little bit in between. It can be a pick and choose kind of album.
Yeah, and I think I do like that with artists. I keep going back to the Beatles, but you don't go through the whole entire Beatles catalog and go, "No, I like that." There'll be things you don't, but that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fun. So you're listening to things and go, I like that, and I think that journey is nice with an artist as well. Definitely.
Yeah. I've got my Beatles poster in the background. I don't know if you can see it or not, but
I'm on a big Beatles sort of back catalog listing at the moment. I'm currently going through Paul McCartney's singles, and he's got like his solo career, and he's got like 40 albums.
I got to see him back in 2018, and it was incredible. And what was funny is I had gone through a bunch of his stuff, and my parents are there, and they're singing all his old stuff, and then I'm singing all this new stuff, and they're like looking at me like, I was like, yeah, like he's got stuff now, like
yeah, he hasn't stopped. He's mad.
The man has not stopped. I can't believe it. I get tired after playing for an hour. That dude's gone for 60 years.
Yeah, his energy is mad. So what's your favorite song from the album and why?
From my album?
Yeah, from Change of Pace.
That changes depending on the day.
Today.
It changes depending on the day. I think I like certain parts about all of them. I like this, and you would know this as well when recording. I like that there are little stories in each song that, like, oh, you hear that? Well, that day, like, so there are certain songs I have more of a connection with where I'm like, oh, I remember recording this one and how much fun it was. I would say Time We Share was just the most fun to do. That one and Hard to Say Goodbye, I think those are the two that I think I had the most fun with, and that when I play like live shows, those are the two I play the most because they're a bit more up tempo, they're a bit more upbeat, and it gets people kind of into it a little bit more.
Very nice, yeah. I'm going to be, after this interview, reacting to it. So I haven't listened to it yet, but I will be after this. So you're giving me some suggestions.
So sorry. I'm so sorry in advance.
What are you sorry about?
that you have to listen to it. It's just
I tell you, I love listening to music, all music, and my problem is I'm on a constant search for interesting music that gets me, and but I always try to do it from an honest point of view, and I always try to do it where I'm going from a wider range of views. So I'm not going to be like, that's country, I hate that, so never like that. If I can, a good song's a good song, and
for sure.
When something's good, definitely. So if you could give people one reason to listen to your music, what would it be?
How much time you got? One reason to listen to it's again, I don't want to use the word different because it's not, I'm sure you could find other things that are like it. But I will say this, I like, and I think this is a phrase that everybody can agree with, I like happy music. And I like music that makes you feel good. Everyone loves the good, they've got the what I call the white girl sad songs, where they, it makes them, it makes you feel thing. And I love those too. Everyone loves Creep by Radiohead. It's not an upbeat song, but everyone loves it. But there's just something special about those songs that got that little bit of an up tempo beat and got that little bit of a pace. And and I like that, that I tried my best with this whole album to kind of make it like that. And every song's got a little bit of a different style. And the title of the album comes from my buddy. I sent him when I was working on stuff. I sent him all these stuff, and he goes, "I love every song." He goes, "Every song is different. It's like a big change of pace." And that's when I just go, "Okay, that's it right there." That's what I was looking
Okay.
for.
I was wondering where it came from, because looking at your back catalogue, I saw change of pace and going, but I haven't listened to anything yet. So what's the change of pace about? But
it's in the album. It's in the thing.
It's in the album.
Yeah, it is. But then I had to write the song too, because I was like, if that's going to be the name of the album, I had to write that song then too. So he gets big credit for that. He says that he owns 1% of my future earnings. So I've already sent him about 3 pennies. So but
he's getting something.
He's happy about it. But no, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit, out there, and I just try to put as much of myself into it as possible. So, if you like me, then maybe you'll like the album. If not, then I completely understand. So
it's funny, isn't it? Music is the most heavily criticized of all art forms, and
Sure.
everyone feels like they've got an opinion on it. And it can be so like devastating when people don't like your stuff, and you've got to have tough skin to be a musician. Like, you might make a piece of artwork, but no one's going to go, "I hate that,"
Yeah.
But music, everyone seems to be able to chime in on it. And that can be hard.
Yeah. And I remember every criticism that I've gotten about my music and stuff. You don't remember all the, I'll play 3-hour shows and people will like come up and, "Oh, we love you. We love you. That's great." But I remember in 8th grade when this girl told me after I played Holiday by Green Day that it sounded nothing like that. Like, that's like, no, that's still burned in my head. Like,
It does.
I
still have since starting reacting to stuff, I still have this one artist that didn't like my reaction, and that's still burned into my memory and will be for the rest of my life. And the 99% that have been overwhelmingly positive, you still remember that. When you do, as an artist, you got to have
I was about to say, I don't envy what you, I mean, that's it. I don't envy, I couldn't review stuff because that stuff would get to me, but they're just like, "Well, you just don't know," like that. It's like, don't be mean to me. I'm just doing what I want.
No, because exactly, I know how I'd feel about an artist when someone tells me something's not right, they don't like it. I'll remember that. So for me to review others can seem a bit hypocritical at times, but I do try and have the ethos to be nice, and I'm very polite and British, so it works well. So have you ever? Well, you have actually. I was about to ask, have you ever performed your music? You already talked about that.
Yeah.
Is it generally local live shows?
Yeah, I'll do some. I started playing near the beginning of 2021. Because it's actually near the end of 2020, actually, because we were not coming out of it, but we were starting to get people back into places and stuff like that over here.
Yeah.
So I started playing bars and pubs and breweries and small events and things like that, and it's grown a little bit. I played some weird ones. I played a 25-year high school reunion, and that was the weirdest one I played. It was wild, and they didn't like the fact that I said I was 25. They hated that. They hated that, but they were super nice, and it was one of those things. It's going to be a story for me. But yeah, I play a bunch of live shows and stuff. I've got one this Saturday at a local place, actually right down the road. It's the closest show I'll ever have. But.
Nice. Do you play solo, just acoustic guitar, or with people?
Yeah, I usually just keep it to some solo acoustic stuff. I don't try to get fancy with it. And the big thing, like this album and my own music taste, I keep a wide range of songs just on tap and on cue, and I'll take requests and play. I tell people, like, I will try to play. If I have an inkling of how it goes, I'll try to play it. And so that opens yourself up to a bigger crowd too, because, I'll go from, I did this the other night. I went from playing the Eagles to it was the Eagles, and then it was like a 80s rock thing again, but then it was Britney Spears right after that. Like, if you can just play all this thing, and then it was a Chris Stapleton song, like a country song. Like, if you can change like that, I mean, the crowd will, like, they'll be interested the whole time.
That's it. And at that level, when you're playing like local scenes, you have to include a lot of covers, and then throw in a few of your own, and then mention that you're on Spotify. But you can't go full, just, I'm going to play all my songs and then leave, because, you have to tease it in, unfortunately.
Yeah, I used to be, like, okay, I'm not playing my enemies. I try to sneak one or two of mine in the night, and I always throw out the spot, like you said. That's exactly. I mean, because I'll wait for like a dull moment. I'm like, all right, it's a little dull. All right, one of my songs. All right, I'm not gonna lose anybody here. I'm not gonna lose anybody, but we'll just get a couple of ears perked up.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm glad you're doing that as well, because you can fall into the trap of purely playing covers, so that people enjoy you and they'll have you back. But if your main goal is to be listened to as an artist and taken seriously, you do have to put that in, don't you? Yeah. So I've got two last questions. First one, how do you feel the internet has impacted your approach to being an artist?
Wow. Well, the big thing with me is I am such an old man. And it's not that, it's not that I think, well, I didn't have Instagram before I started playing. I had one like in high school, but I deleted it in college because I was like, I don't like this. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm not a social media person. So I'm not good at promoting myself, and that's part of it. So I think that's how, social media has tried to help me a little bit. Just like, okay, you got to kind of put yourself out there a little bit. And so for myself, it's kind of forced me to come out of my shell a little bit, and kind of, hey, quit saying you're terrible on, podcasts and stuff, and kind of push yourself and promote yourself a little bit more. But yeah, like I said, I don't play into it as much as I probably should.
It's become the main focus, really. It's not playing at bars waiting for someone to come in and like pick you up as an artist anymore.
Yeah.
It's purely online.
Yeah.
Which difficult.
It's nice, I can look up places and, oh, these places have live music and who plays there. Oh, I know these people. That's kind of nice to have all that. And I have absolutely no illusions of grandeur. I'm not like, oh, if I keep doing this, then I'm going to make it big and I'm going to play back. That's not my end goal. I've never really thought that. I love playing. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to, entertain others. I just do it for the fun of it. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't, if it happens, awesome. Like, that'd be cool to like have, play like some mini concerts and stuff like that. I would love, I would love to hear people singing one of my songs. But I cried once because at my school, I also direct the musicals at my school, and my musical kids, they listen to my music all the time because I think they're just being annoying. I think that's why they do it, because they just talk about it a bunch. But they came in one day and I was just sitting at the piano playing, and one of them was like, "Hey, play your song." They said, "Play Sweet Sounds." And I said, "I'm not doing that." And they kind of all bullied me. And I was like, "Fine." So I just played a start chord, and they all started singing.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it just made me cry. I'm just like, number one, you listen to it, I love that. But number two, they know it, and it just made me so happy. It was one of those really good moments. But that was something where I was like, okay, I like what I'm doing. I like what I'm doing.
I'm glad what you said about the end goal, because too often everyone, friends, family, everyone around you seems to think the end goal is about you getting famous. And they say, oh, when you're famous, don't forget me, or, whatever. Yeah. But why should that be the end goal? That like less than 1% of artists become that these days. It's so saturated, the music market. So why not just do it because you enjoy it? That's a really good point. Make music because you love it. And then if people like it, great.
Yeah. If you lose sight of that and you see that, people who they do make it big, and why is their music that they used to make and now nothing like now they're in this machine, and now they're going for numbers. They're not doing it out of passion anymore. They're doing it out of, obligation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm just aware of the time because I'm thinking it's going to kick us out soon. We've got 9 minutes. Cool. So
okay.
I'm only on the free version of Zoom doing it budgeting. All right. Right. So you spoke about kind of briefly about what's next for you. How do you feel it's going to go?
Oh, just terribly, just awful.
You're so self-deprecating.
Oh yeah, no.
And this is coming from a British person who is very, very self-deprecating. We all are.
That's kind of associated with your guys' culture. I mean, that's
No,
come
and join us. You should move here. We've got no money.
I'm more than welcome to. I love, like I said, I grew up in the Beatles, but I love British television. I love watching. I watch panel shows like all day long. British comedians are some of my absolute favorites. So yeah, I've big heavy influence over there. But next for me, how I think it's going to go. Well, like I said, I did change of pace with this one studio, and unfortunately, they kind of changed their gears and what they were doing. So I did Paradise with another studio, and again, it was just me and one other guy who I had just met him as well. But we worked so well together, and it went for me like it was so much fun. It felt like I was just back at home, like I was just doing and playing for fun. And so I'm going to go back to that studio again to do this. I've already talked to them about doing this full album. I'm hoping to record this summer.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, and it was like this when I did Change of Pace as well, they're some of the most creative people that I know, and some of the most creative people that they can like add these amazing things to their song while still keeping it what I imagine it to be, but like helping me find out what it could be.
Yeah, not changing it too much, and keeping it on the track.
It's still, I can still listen and go, yeah, this is what there were some songs I would go in and I was like, I know exactly how I want this to sound. I know what instruments I want. And some was like, I have no clue. I'm like, this is like, here's it. What do you think? And they have the creative ability and they have the talent, the skill to go, okay, we know what it could be and what it will be. So like it's just finding it from there. And which, like that's just so much fun in a studio to just play with it and just see what happens. Try this out. In the one song, like my buddy just picked up, he goes, what if we did the mandolin solo here? I was like, what are you talking about? And it ended up being, I was like, all right, this is awesome. Like, I love mandolins now.
Oh yeah, I want to get back in the studio. I record here. But doing it with other people can be so good if you've got the right people, definitely. So, yeah. And I think Paradise, the quality of Paradise was really, really good. So I think you've made a good choice there with the production, definitely. Brilliant. Yeah. So thank you for coming on. Really.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my word.